But at the end of the day, those were everybody in wearing the uniform, brothers and sisters, you know,
Yeah.
and it's our job to take care of and build them up and, make them the best that they can be. So having that attitude of like, I'm better than you is no.
Hello, ladies and gents. I'm Glenn, aka Nurse Dad, former Navy Hospital Corpsman and current ER nurse, and welcome to my channel. Welcome to my podcast. This podcast will eventually be available wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're listening right now from, say, Spotify, you are in the future. And welcome. Thank you. For everyone else living in this moment, this podcast is available in full episodes, video, clips, and stories on my YouTube. That is at nurse/dad. Also my Instagram, nurse.dad. I'm also on X and TikTok. I'll have links in the description. Well, the best part of this podcast is that I get to catch up with friends, pals who are incredible human beings that I learned a lot from and who are just rocking and rolling. I wanted to bring their experiences to you because if I could benefit from it, you will. Or just be entertained because they all have very diverse and extraordinary pasts. Today, you're going to meet a friend of mine, Lynn. He is a former Navy Hospital Corpsman like myself. He is a combat vet multiple times over, 4 tours, and he has a lot to say. He's an incredible leader. He is a very thoughtful guy. He makes you feel right at place. I served active duty 5 years. He did 6.5, as you'll find out. But we met while attached to a reservist unit, a Marine artillery unit based out of Bristol, Pennsylvania. We did field work at Fort Dix in Jersey, and our main clinic, was also located in Jersey. It was, for me, it was an extraordinary time because I was balancing that with nursing school. I remember I went back in because I wanted to go to the Navy Nurse Corps eventually. And I also felt, ironically enough, in nursing school that I was losing my medical skills. And so I decided to get back into the reserves. And I don't think I was a week or two in before some Navy chief who was also attached to this unit, this artillery unit. He came to me and he's like, look, we need a guy like you. I know you're in nursing school. I know you need to study a lot. You know how the Marines are. If you do your job, they will leave you alone, and you could study and do whatever you need to do. That was very appealing to me. I was looking for the right Marine unit to go to, so I arrived there. Chief turned out another chief who was organic to that unit, who was active duty, turned out to be he was a petty officer, second class, who had picked me up at Camp Pendleton when I arrived there years before, and that was now my chief, which was great. So it was a good command, and it was funny to be in nursing school and be in the clinicals and just be a glorified tech, and then I'm reporting to my service, my once a month weekend service, and I'm able to suture if I had to, and do advanced trauma care and prescribe medicine and do a much more advanced treatment plan and that I would ever, I guess, that I still can't do as a nurse, things I still would never be able to do. So that was interesting. Lynn had arrived after me. He was a salty dog. And right off the bat, we hit it off. He was, very approachable. Many people don't live up to the kind of experience that Lynn has. And if you were to know Lynn and talk to him, and you'll see it in an interview, you would never know by talking to him. You would never know it. He's very humble, very open, and I can't wait for you guys to meet my buddy here. I want to say please like, share, and subscribe and comment if you're enjoying yourself. It really helps this channel out against the algorithm. The algorithm's kind of a beast. I'm kind of going through it right now with, I don't know if it's shadow banning. I don't know if maybe I had said something politically incorrect. I'm not nasty and I don't call anyone names, but I don't know. I'm not sure if they're still doing that. I know they were doing that in 2020. Maybe I was using too many hashtags. Whatever the case may be, I've noticed that views are down. Maybe it's the content. Maybe the content is needs to be better. I am improving every week. different microphones, cameras, a way to present the information, a way to present myself. So I'm growing. But if you like what you're seeing or hearing, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. I appreciate it. So without further ado, let's kick this big. Yeah, man, thanks a lot for doing this. I appreciate it. But my favorite part though is catching up with you. Well, welcome, ladies and gents. I'm Glenn, aka Nurse Dad, former Navy Hospital Corpsman and current ER nurse. Welcome to my channel. And I'm here with one of my favorite people, Lynn. You are a former Navy Hospital Corpsman, and you work in law enforcement. And I know you from, we both did active duty service, not together, but we were both active duty military. And after that was finished, we both entered the reserves. And I met you at a Marine artillery unit based out of Pennsylvania. And we were both one of the few active duty people that worked there. And I knew right off the bat, you were a cool dude with long, quite a background in the military. So you just want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, man, thanks for having me on. I did 6.5 active and just about 4 in the reserves. And it was cool when we met at the artillery battalion. 2 active duty guys in the reserves. You don't get that a lot.
No,
A
you
lot of
don't.
guys, it's like off the street, never did active time, just part-time, kind of committed to the reserves. But it's great having those guys anyway, because you need that auxiliary force in the military. So
Yeah,
being
yeah,
with a fellow active duty guy prior service, that's money.
yeah. And our chief, he was a HM2 picking me up, literally in his car. I think it was like some tiny little car when I arrived at Camp Pendleton to go to my first command, the School of Infantry. And then he wound up years later being my chief, our chief at that. He was active duty at that command, and we were the weekend warriors there. Um, yeah, right off the bat, something about you, not just because you're active duty, but you're an open-minded person. You encompass some of the best qualities that corpsmen have. That they're very individualistic, but also you're green side through and through. And for those watching, Army, they have their own medics, 68 whiskey. They kind of produce their own people with that regard. The Marine Corps doesn't. There's no Marine medics. It's Navy Hospital Corpsmen. When you enter, you realize that the corpsmen you have of the Navy, that is, you have the blue side, which is kind of we refer to as Navy being Navy ships, shore commands, wearing the Navy uniform, and then you have green side, which is pretty much anything related to the Marine Corps. You're wearing their uniform, you're following their rules, you're with them. Often, I guess sometimes if you're in the field, days will go by, you won't even see another sailor. It'll just be you representing. So that's what I mean when we say green side. So Lynn, how old were you when you enlisted? What made you choose the Navy, and specifically to be a corpsman?
Yeah, I was 17 years old when I went to recruiting station. I actually shipped out for basic 4 days before my birthday. So I turned 18 at basic training. I was getting
Wow.
my ID photo taken. The lady goes, "Hey, happy birthday." And I was like, "Oh man, that's today. Wow. All right, great."
Really?
And,
Wow. That goes to show your level of focus, because 17-year-olds aren't forgetting their birthdays. Or
no,
18-year-olds aren't forgetting their birthdays.
yeah, I was locked in. Basic was giving me the old 1-2 in the corner punch there. And it was good. 17 years old, going off to
Good.
basic training. It's time, you got to put your big boy pants on to get it done.
What was the catalyst for that? I mean, I still want to get why Corpsman, but what inspired a 17-year-old to join?
I just come from a small town, like 2,500 total residents
Pennsylvania, right?
in New
Pennsylvania.
Jersey, South
Oh, New
Jersey.
Jersey. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a very small town. There's not really many opportunities. You either, go into law enforcement, or you go to nursing, or you work at the prison, or jail. So I
Or
was
Joe.
like, let me go see some of the world. Um, I had some buddies that went off into the Navy after high school,
Mhm.
and I always saw them traveling. You know, you got guys in Japan, you got guys in Korea, in
Mhm.
Europe, in Africa, just doing all, seeing everything. So I figured that's the way to go.
Yeah,
And
that's cool though that the military you still have plenty of places in the country where the military really is the best option to getting out and having somewhere to land. It's anybody could just leave, but somewhere to go and somewhere that'll have you.
wanted to get
Yeah.
out, see things, not be that guy that never left the hometown.
Why
And
Corpsman? What made you choose that one?
so I went to EMT school, um, and got my EMT certification in 2006. So I was going to do the EMT firefighter, like paramedic route. And when I
And
went to the
that was
recruiting,
what, 17 years old? Six, like how old were you?
I was 16 years old when I got my
Oh,
EMT
16.
certification.
What made you choose that? There was something about, I mean, EMTs are kind of like the cowboy wing of the hospital. They're out in the field. They become like corpsmen
Yeah.
in a way, like that energy. They're out in the field and they got their wits and whatever they have in the ambulance at the disposal. Was there something about that culture? Because I've noticed sometimes people really like that. Or what did you want to track? Did you want something else after that? Or that was just kind of a way to learn skills quickly.
So I grew up across the street from a fire station. And
Okay.
you know, the fire whistle would go off, and you see the guys show up, putting their gear on, getting in. It was all volunteer. It wasn't a paid
Right.
station. So, you know, these are guys that are with their families. They're dropping everything at the drop of a dime. You know, getting up in the middle of dinner, getting up in the middle of the night, showing up, and just being there for people they don't even know. And to me, that spoke volumes for who these men are.
Yeah,
So,
it sounds like even at that age, you were very conscious of the man you wanted to be, and you saw that, and you wanted to emulate that to a degree.
oh, definitely. I wanted to be, you know, that guy that people go, oh, that's a good guy, that he helps people. You know, he goes out of his way to do things for others. It was just something I always thought was admirable growing up, watching all the volunteer firefighters, volunteer EMTs just going above and beyond for people that they've maybe never met before in their lives.
So you're kind of unlike myself. You're introduced to that medical culture before you enlisted.
I just knew if I wouldn't you know, got into the military, I never would have went anywhere. And there's a lot of people that live around me that, you know, a half hour drive's far.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I don't want to go do this because it's on the other side of the county, and which realistically is like 35 minutes. I give a lot of people credit. It's very comfortable. We have pretty much everything we need locally.
Yeah. Well, you had that curiosity. I've graduated and I've come back and I've realized some people they have no they don't want to leave, and that's fine. Some people like yourself, they just got to go.
I went to the Navy recruiter because of my buddies that were in.
Right.
Had a couple of guys that were in my high school class, and they were like, "Hey, we should do the buddy program." Nobody else wanted to be a corpsman. They wanted to go be like aviation mechanics and
Did you say the
do.
buddy program?
Yeah, there was like a buddy program you could join with a friend, and they
Really?
send you to basic
It's a
training
good
at the same time.
wow, that's like a really good idea. I never heard of the buddy program. You nervous? You can go with a friend of yours. You can
Yeah,
it's crazy. That's a great idea. Wow.
yeah. Well, two of the guys that left with me, they were twin brothers,
Oh, wow.
and their older brother was in, so he went a few years ahead of us, and then we went in after him. But
You were
I'd say
talking like, yeah, the buddy program. And then I'm like, wait, I was like, it's great. That makes so much sense though.
we had I mean, for the size of our area, we had a lot of guys going right at the same time. I think there was about seven of us
Yeah, that's a lot.
from like the same, pretty much two towns, like neighboring towns, and you know, we just all went out pretty much within the same month.
That's great. Because I mean, considering I think like recruiters are supposed to get like one person a month or something like that. It's not a very high number. So to have
Uh,
seven people from a tiny town, tiny area,
Our our recruiters down here, man, they were kicking ass. They were
yeah.
just hitting people with the basic left and right.
You grew up in I'm sure, in a very patriotic, have people who have a sense of country, sense of duty. They're around that culture. I'm sure there was a lot of that too going on.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
we're like a small farming community. There's a lot of farming, nurseries. We're down at like the Delaware Bay shore.
Mhm.
So there's like, commercial fishermen in the area, but mostly farming, nurseries.
Did you know the track that you could potentially go on as a corpsman? Because I'll be honest, I was so naive. I was 27, so I was 10 years older than you in terms of going in. I'm older than you in general, but
Mm.
uh so I had no idea, and I picked corpsman because I knew I wanted to go into medical in like in terms of being a nurse, but I remember like week 9 of boot camp, I think week 8 or I can't remember. Toward the end, some senior chief came in, and when you're in boot camp, a senior chief, you're like, the senior chief walked in, called all the corpsmen over, and it was like 4 of us or 5 of us, and he was basically like he was cordial, but then he just cut to the chase, and he said, "Listen, you're all corpsmen. Don't get this Navy shit in your head. You're all going with the Marines." Oh, I was like, "What are you talking about? What are you talking about?" So yeah, I was really naive. Did you go in like understanding the connection that corpsmen have with Marines? What was that discovery for you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I knew the war was hot.
Yeah,
Knew that corpsmen were the ones that are on the battlefield, and they're like EMTs on steroids, just getting
yeah,
shot at and laying down fire, and just getting the whole combat experience plus some. I had
yeah,
a I went to like an event at the VFW, and there was this old salt bag from Vietnam, and the dude
yeah,
was just like that grizzled combat veteran, didn't really say much, but you knew he was about that business.
yeah,
And I told him, I was like, hey, I'm gonna go into the Navy as a corpsman, go work with the Marines. I know the war's hot right now. I'll just jump in the action. And he said, son, step over here. So, just step into my office. So
yeah. This guy, he was an operator. This guy's an operator, like you. You're an operator, but he was an operator.
take a little walk away from the horseshoe pits, just out of earshot from everybody. And he's like, son, let me tell you something. Being a corpsman is the best thing that there is in the entire world. He was like, you're out there, they rely on you. It's your job to be like bigger, faster, stronger, and smarter, and do everything they do, plus carry your medic bag. And he's like, and you know what? At the end of the day, he goes, when you're in combat, they don't call for God, they don't call for their mother, they call for Doc. He
Yeah,
was like, and it's your job to be the best that you can at your job to take care of them, to make sure they all go home to their families.
yeah.
And after he
Ex-
said that to me, dude, I was like,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm gonna learn it all. I'm gonna teach it all because I want to be like a force multiplier
Yeah,
for my job with my guys.
yeah, and I mean, I would say that you're that guy. I'm sure now, if you ever talk to some young person, you'll be that guy. I'll tell you a story. I don't know if I told you this. A couple of years ago, you went to my daughter's birthday. Um, you got drove phenomenal distance, or you spent a lot of
That was
time
a
on the
dream.
road to come. I really appreciated that. That kind of blew me away. Uh, how long of a drive it took you to get there. That one of the things I appreciate the most of the day, actually, was that your effort that you made. I was like, oh, holy cow! But anyway, somebody was there who was in the Secret Service, or he's in the Secret Service, and his then girlfriend, they're engaged now, but his then girlfriend comes up to my wife, and he's like, or comes up to me actually. I was with my wife, and she's like, so and so said he saw your friend, he saw the guy, and he said that guy is an operator. That guy is an operator. And again, I look at you, you got your sunglasses on, you're standing there, and you're chatting with people, but you got that operator feel to you. And I was very proud. I'm very proud to be friends with such an operator. Could you just go over? You've had 4 deployments, right?
Yes, yeah, 4 deployments,
How many combat deployments were they?
3 to Afghanistan.
Okay, and it wasn't with the Marines every time, right? Who did you deploy with?
So the first deployment was like multi-role joint task force support unit type deal.
Yeah.
And we provided support for multiple different entities within the joint task force. So
This
you
is in
had like,
Afghanistan?
yeah, this was in Afghanistan, RC East. We did like logistical support and physical support. We did security forces operations with the joint task force.
What year was that?
2011
Okay.
and into 12.
All right. And your second one?
Oh, so it was 2011 to 2011. I think it was like February to July. And then
Uh,
I deployed again in that same year from September until 2012 in February. And it was with that same group.
what about the third time?
Came back, transferred to actual green side because before I was actually stationed at a blue side command and I was augmented to
Yeah.
deployment. So I left
And
from the branch health clinic in Virginia Beach at Little Creek Amphib Base and deployed forward from there.
that's worth noting too that, anyone who has field medical training, it's a place you go to after a school to pretty much take your clinical skills and be able to apply them in the field while also getting at least the basic training of how Marines operate and what they do, so that when you do eventually go to a Marine unit, you at least know the language and can grow from there. But when you're at a blue side command, you can be pulled. If the Marines need somebody or any kind of unit, you can be pulled, right?
Yeah, they can scoop you up out of the branch health clinics, out of the naval hospitals. If you have that green side,
Mhm.
we used to call it 8404. I know that
Yeah, it's different now.
changed since then and they don't do that, but we're 8404 for life.
Yep. Yeah.
Um, FMF, man, that's where it's at.
That's how
But
I got my deployment. I went from the School of Infantry to Italy, and the first day I talked to the chief and I said, listen, this is a dream come true, but I feel like I got more to give. And if there is a combat deployment with the Marines, I want to be the first to consider. Now, I did get a combat deployment that changed into a MU, a Marine Expeditionary Unit, but again, that was a blue side command, and though I volunteered for it, that those deployment more than one deployment had come up, and more people had left Italy to go. And if the Navy needs you, they're going to take you.
when I was at the branch health clinic, man, my senior chief, uh, at the time, I'm a young kid. I was 18, 19 years old. The rules, I was, still acclimating to having this much rules in my life. And the senior chief, man, he was hard on me. We butted heads a lot, kind of like
Yeah.
you know, a kid trying to make his way in the world, and then he's getting told what to do all the time. So I just, every time something will come up, he's like, "What's your problem?" I'm like, I want to deploy. I want to do more. I don't want to sit in this clinic. And he's like, "Why do you think I'm rotating you through every single department in here?"
Oh, is
And I'm
that
like,
what he was doing?
"Yeah." It's like, you get assigned to a department, you get comfortable, you learn the ways, and you just stay there. And it seemed like every other week he's like, "Oh, you're gonna go here. Oh, you're gonna go here." And when in the time, I'm like, "This guy's busting my balls." And
Yeah.
then, looking
Sorry, man.
back,
Just trying to.
oh, here he was, like making sure I was getting all the experience so I could be better in my career because
Mhm.
he didn't want me to get stagnant and just sit around and be that one trick pony. So then I'm telling him, I'm like, I want to go, I want to go, I want to go. And he's like, "Well, dude, you got to make yourself more marketable." I'm like, "Well, what do you
Yeah.
need me to do?" He's like, "Well, we got this course coming up. It's Tactical Combat Care TCCC instructor." And I'm like, "When do I start?" He goes like, "I knew you were going to say that. I already signed you up. You start on Tuesday," like that kind of thing.
I
So
wonder. That's the kind of old school. I wonder if that still goes on. That's like a certain time, a certain generation.
I mean, I'm sure there's still some of the old breed moseying around in the field.
Yeah.
It's probably few and far between now.
And that's also worth noting that he wanted to make you more competitive to go and show you how many guys were hardcore about doing it. It's not like, oh no, they're gonna pull me. Like we were just kind of making it sound like, oh, you could be at the Navy side and they're gonna take you. I think 99.9% of the corpsmen that I've ever met on the green side, I mean, like us, don't even want to go to blue side. That's like totally fine going from one green side command to the next. Like
Oh yeah.
very gung ho guys, very motivated people.
Initial in the Navy was not to go blue side at all.
Mm,
Um, but when I was picking orders, I didn't want to stay on the West Coast. I wanted to come back to the East Coast. That's where my family is. I didn't want to be home, but I wanted to be like close to home instead of, flying 6 hours to come back to the East Coast from California
yeah.
or just being on the Eastern Seaboard. That was my goal. So if it was either, Pensacola or Virginia Beach or somewhere along that lines, in between, that's what I was taking. There
Mm.
wasn't a lot of Camp Lejeune orders coming from Pendleton from FMTB, so I just had to take what I could. Ended up in Little Creek Amphib Base, Virginia Beach.
Where did you go to FMTV?
I went in 2009,
On the
February, March, March
East
2000.
Coast,
No, West Coast, Pendleton.
on West Coast. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
we were. Anyone who goes to West Coast is very fortunate. I feel. Camp
And
Pendleton.
it's argued that's where real FMF corpsmen are made.
Yeah, it is argued. Yeah,
It-
yeah. That's I was. You don't realize it when well, I didn't realize it when I first got there. Just how lucky I was to make Camp Pendleton. So you've known Lynn from the beginning that you wanted to be an EMT, and you were inspired by firehouse across the street and seeing these men who were volunteers show up to do a job, put their lives on the line. And you wanted to, all of us were very impressionable in our teenage years. I guess a lot of my heroes were action heroes like, Stallone and Hulk Hogan and, but overall they were men of their word and they would protect people who were vulnerable and they were loyal to their families. It seemed as though those are traits that you admired, I admired, and you see that all over the culture, especially Marine culture. Now, when you finally got to your Green Site Command, you enlisted, you got through a boot camp, you did A school, you did field medical training, you're finally able to go to a Green Site. Well, and you deployed. Before that, so you were really in it. You weren't just coming from boot camp and A school and getting rushed into FMTB like you had, right? I mean, you did FMTB, but you had done the two deployments with a non-Marine group, right? It was joint, right? It wasn't
yeah,
total green side.
I went to the basic training, went across the street to
Yeah,
Corpsman A school. From Corpsman A school, went straight to San Diego to Camp Pendleton for
yeah,
FMTV West. And after FMTV West, Virginia Beach deployment.
right. And
So
that
I
was
was
that unit was a joint. What was it? Was it official green side command or
my first tour was
yeah,
not.
yeah,
It was joint
right.
operations. There was
So yeah,
Army, Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps. We had the whole mix. I think there was some Coast Guard there
yeah,
doing customs enforcement stuff. So,
had a little bit more of a different vibe, right?
oh yeah, for lack of a better word, my first tour was I would say comfortable. We had there was things going on. There was a kinetic environment. So it wasn't like, you got to relax, but there you come back to base, you got chow hall. We weren't on one of
Yeah,
the bigger fobs that had like the 24-hour barbecue tents or some of the other cool amenities. We definitely didn't have the Kandahar boardwalk. Uh, but what we had was ours. We built everything.
yeah,
We made ourselves like a CrossFit training gym. where it was just like a big wooden shed, it was huge, it was big.
Yeah. I
Um,
guess that's what happens when you're so close to Air Force personnel. You get some of that sort of amenities.
yeah. I mean, also, I mean, it's 2011. The money was, nobody was complaining about, oh, where are we going to get money for this? Where are we going to get money
Yeah.
for that? We were just in the war, and they were like, you want to build a CrossFit gym? Yeah, just here's all the things you need. We just put it up.
Yeah.
We had ropes and pegboards and all the weights we could get our hands on. And thank God, because being able to just PT
Yeah.
and getting all that stress off your chest, that's probably one of the more important things when you're over there.
When you first got to you finally get to a green sign unit. What was that moment where you felt like you were totally at home? Was it everything you hoped and more, or I mean, you know what I'm trying to get at with this.
So, all right. So
I know it's
I
a mix of
came,
emotions, but
it, yeah, yeah. You want to talk about mixed bag, dude. So I get to Greenside, I go from Virginia Beach to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. I'm checking in the Second Marine Division, and they just tell you, hey, show up. You're in your dress uniform. Have your I
yeah.
Love Me binder. Have your orders. Have your last evals, and all the things that you just take with you.
And were you E3 at this time or E4? Like, what was your rank?
I was E4. I was in third class.
Okay, so at least you're a petty officer.
Yeah. So I get there.
That means something with the with the Marines.
It
That
really
means a
does.
lot.
I mean, even if in a green side command, if you're an E3 and you got your chest candy stacked up right because
You could be
you're
what they call the
working
senior lance or something
women,
like that,
that
right?
that's fine. They respect that too.
Yeah.
But I was fortunate enough to get there with a crow, and
And the
and
ribbons, right? You had that Afghan ribbon and a couple
yeah, I had some awards, a couple commendation medals.
yeah,
Um,
you were good.
yeah, I was good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, showing up to Greenside with two tours with an operational unit under your belt, like
Yeah.
you're good. And man, dude, let me tell you, I had fantastic leadership leading all the way up to that point. Not many people get to say that. So I got to show up to Second Marine Division with some confidence in my abilities because I had been trained by some of the best around. So I get there, I go check in, and they're like, "Where do you want to go?" And I'm like, "I want to get back to Afghanistan. Who's the first ride out of here?" So they're
Really?
like, well, this unit's leaving in like a few weeks, and they've already been to CAX. So CAX is I think they call it Mojave Viper or did. I don't know what they call it now, but it's like your pre-mobilization training when you go from
Yeah.
your home station to 29 Palms. You do like a simulated deployment for a month and then come back and then you deploy. So they're like, yeah, this unit here, they already been to CAX. We don't really want to throw you in without your pre-deployment training. The next one out is going to be second CEB. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like an infantry unit. And the one guy goes, listen, um, I know some of those guys over there. They are like solid. They're not, it's
Yeah.
not infantry, but you know, they do route clearance, so they're out ahead of the infantry. So if they're going to be a mounted combat patrol, route clearance is going to be out there. And I'm
Yeah.
like, dude, I know what route
Kind of like
clearance.
a MARSOC unit or what used to be Force Recon.
Yeah, yeah, but just like with
Yeah.
heavy equipment.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're like them. I mean, the fact that you're before everyone else. That's what I mean.
Yeah. So I told the guy, I was like, I know what route clearance is. He goes, yeah, but have you seen Marines do it? And I was like, you know what? Come to think of it, uh, the army, the army route clearance package, dude, it would take them days to do a mile. The Marines are like, we're gonna get miles in a day. They were
Yeah,
just
yeah,
eating. They wanted to get there, get it done, and get back.
yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I'm down. Let's go. April 2012, I get to Camp Lejeune, and we are wheels up to Afghanistan in September.
Okay.
So
Wow.
most of that time was just training and getting ready to leave. So it wasn't just, your normal green side sitting around waiting for word. Um, we were just every day we did something, and then us corpsmen, we had some training that we were allowed to go to for extra training, which was good. We got to do the live tissue labs.
Oh, it's
Um,
yeah, CTM. I think combat trauma management.
I think we
That's
called
that's what it
it
was called when I did it before my deployment.
I think we called it OEMS back then.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, but what an interesting class that was. We don't talk about it with that NDA,
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah.
but if you know, you know.
Yeah. No, it's a good class.
Yeah.
It's a good class. Did you do with the simulated town where they had actors like they might not have like their legs and they were reenacting? You did that
Yeah.
too? I mean, I guess by that
Yeah.
point you had already deployed once before, but
Yeah, at that point, part of the training, I'm like, hey, it would probably be more like this. And they're like, oh, really? I'm like, I just got back and I know like what's up to date and what's not up to date. And I go, yeah, we appreciate when you guys come to these classes because, we're just working off of the last word that we got. So it's nice to have that fresh data coming in. So it was cool, because I got to like, hey, this is what's going on now. This is some of the newer stuff that we have out in the field.
we didn't have to deal with that. But I remember people who were in like at 99 or something like that. They said up until September 11th, which for some younger people they might not remember, it was 2001. They were still teaching Vietnam era forms of field medicine, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the unfortunate good things about war is that they do a lot of research and development on new procedures and techniques and equipment, and they can test and experiment with different things. So from,
Like
September
even
11th.
combat gauze, they realized that the powder, that the surgeons were complaining that we're doing surgery and this powder for the blood clotting is everywhere inside the body. And so I think at least by the time I was doing it, they had turned the powder into a combat gauze, and you would pack the wounds with the gauze. It would, then you have coagulation.
Yeah, so when I first deployed, we were still using the quick clot powder,
Okay, there you go.
hemostatic powder. We were still using it. But like you said, the surgeons they're like, hey, this is not working for us. And we're like, well, it's working for us because, they were bleeding and now they're not bleeding. But they were using the hemostatic dressings for like with the kaolin, and then we were getting the training on it. They're like, oh yeah, this is the same stuff that's in Pepto-Bismol. I'm like, well, that's pretty interesting that it stops bleeding and diarrhea in different application forms. So, but yeah, we were just using those combat gauze, and then they had like the rolled ones, and then they figured out like the Z fold was better for just like
Yeah.
packing. So, I mean, they were just changing things at the cyclic rate when we were just going back and forth.
I learned a few things from some of the old school guys. I remember one guy he had deployed like one of the first deployments in 2001. And unfortunately, there was like mortar fire, and people had, you know, explosions are occurring. So people are caught in that. And he said, I was this is just a field corpsman in Camp Pendleton, but there was, the mortar range. You had to kind of pack different things for different types of, hopefully not, but possible injuries. If it's, especially if, for example, if a mortar explodes, you might have 4 or 5 Marines who are injured at the same time, bleeding out. But this guy was like, no matter what they give you, just keep a roll of saran wrap in your med bag. And he would talk about how some of the guys he was treating at the time, like their entire sides were ripped open, and he was saran wrapping their torsos, or because they didn't have anything at the time, didn't have enough of anything, and so they were using saran wrap. But like just things like that. Hello, folks. I hope you're enjoying the interview. Before we go back, let me announce I wrote a children's book, Isabel Learns to Share, a love letter from me to my firstborn daughter, Isabel. It's available on Amazon, but let me be clear. In a world of AI, this book is written by me, every word of it. Everything this book earns goes right to the podcast.
This book emphasizes family values, respects parents, and respects children as they go through life making mistakes, but ultimately learning how to become their best selves. Click the link down below, support the podcast, and get yourself a copy. Thank you very much.
Yeah, like that Saran wrap thing, that was pretty real. I saw it. It wasn't one of my bags of tricks.
No, no, not you.
You know what though? A timeless classic for gunshot wounds, tampons.
Really? I guess
Yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah.
Like people were buying tampons and keeping them on them.
I was people buying tampons. Yeah.
Honestly, if I had heard that at Camp Pendleton, that was like one of the things because the packaging for that kind of thing took up so much room in the med bag. I definitely might have not brought a couple of couple of clings or whatnot to use tampons. Tampons it fit very nicely in my med bag.
They fit good in the med bag. It went right next to the needle thoracentesis kits, and it all fit together.
Yeah, I made a video the other day of my old kit. I kept it. I was watching The Pit, which is like this medical drama on
Love
HBO
that show, dude.
Max. I love
Love
it,
that
dude.
show.
Best show I've ever seen. But they're doing the Crikes a few times. And I was like, I showed my wife, and then I was like, I'm gonna make a little video of it. And yeah, it's really. I was part of a code team as a nurse, and the doctor was doing the Crike, and as a nurse, you're just not allowed to do anything like that. And I'm watching this guy do it, and I felt like intervening. I mean, I've never done it on a human being, but I've done it, live tissue or a lot of dummies. But he was doing it wrong, and we lost the patient. I really felt like just give me it, I just wanted to. I even said something to that effect, like, I've done this before. He's like, no, I got it, but I don't think people realize, like, you're a corpsman. You can become certified to do a crike, to do a chest tube, to do a tension pneumothorax. You're prescribing medicine in the field. There's nobody with a PhD in the field. You're the guy. You have to know triage. You have to know if it's a break, if it's a stress fracture, if it's an infection you can't control in the field. I mean, just between triage and practical application, especially in terms of trauma, I don't think people understand just how far it goes. We're called medical technicians, but that does not translate into civilian. That's the civilian terminology for that.
No, not at all.
That's
Like,
something I have to deal with as a nurse. You can't. I'll never do certain things again, from suturing to the types of assessments that I got used to. You get kind of spoiled. If you put in the work and you have the expertise and the authority, it really is a great feeling. And you get so used to being able to do that.
yeah, I mean, like when you're forward deployed, sometimes, like for example, when I was with the Marines, we were not at the main fob, we were in OP, and we
Mm.
were very, very remote. So everything with my uh platoon was all me.
Yeah,
So, I got a guy, he's like, I've had gastrointestinal disruption for, 3 days now. And I'm like, okay, well, that's indicated for the use of this medication, and we're going to do
yeah,
that. And I had all those things in my AMOL case, and I'm just literally prescribing this dude antibiotics because my uh, doctor, my DO back at camp was like, this is what you do for this is what you do for that. So it was me just taking the initiative and probing him and becoming a sponge to find out all the things that I could to make myself more useful downrange. So at the first deployment with the Joint Task Force, we had everything. So if I ever had a question and I needed to, I just run over to the surgical team and I'm like, hey, doctor so and so, I'm stumped. And
yeah.
then they would be like, oh, yeah, this is what you're going to do. And I'm like, great,
Right.
appreciate the help. But forward with the Marines, everything is, you got to rely on what you learned and your memory. And then you have like all your books that you could fit in your case with you that you had a little bit of extra room for. So you're just reading and reading and reading. And, your guys are sick and you're treating them, man. You're a field medical technician that's giving antibiotics to your
I know.
guys. So
You're,
it was
yeah.
cool, man. It was something that none of these other generations are going to be able to experience the way we did.
Well, I mean, Corpsman now, in the new generation, they're all capable and probably in positions of doing all that stuff at the moment.
No. So I went to a training at Fort Sam Houston before I got off of active duty in 2014. And I was like taking a peek at some of the curriculum. I had a friend that was an
That's the
instructor
year
for
I got out of active duty, 2009 to 2014. That was my active duty term. So, okay, could go on. Just wanted to get that in there.
yeah,
Where was
I stuck it out a year longer than you did on active duty. But yeah, dude, I was looking at the curriculum and wow, what a change. They pretty much did like the EMT book and a little bit extra, but we were leaps and bounds ahead of what they were doing.
once they get to like a unit, right? They're probably well, it's harder. You and I had a similar background because we had access in the very beginning. We pretty much got spoiled. I was at the School of Infantry, but the medical team that covers it is part of the branch clinic of the Navy Hospital. I was in field section, but I was in a Navy clinic. It wasn't a battalion aid station that is on the green side or Marine at a Marine command that is funded by the Marines. It's pretty much. I mean, there's no connection. There's no OSHA. There's no Joint Chiefs, Joint Commission. There's no oversight because that's your responsibility. But I mean, you are remote. You're have the Navy and Navy medicine says goodbye, do a good job, represent us well. But we were both in the beginning attached to, they had the funding of Big Navy, they had the doctors on hand, nurses, you had the ability to, when you needed something, it was there. At least that was my experience. When I needed anything, it was there. If I wanted to talk to an IDC or a PA or an MD on why did you do that? Or how could I do this differently? I had access. That was the kind of access you had, right?
Yeah, for the most part, and until I did, we got to Camp Leatherneck, and then they were like, "All right, you guys are going to be in OPX, and you guys are going to be in OPY, and you guys are going to be in OPZ,"
When
and
you
it
talk
was
about
the
until your
line.
deployment, right?
What's that?
Until your deployment, you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
No,
all the way
I
up
was
until
talking
you're
about the
fully
beginning.
deployed, we all
Yeah,
had
I was
IDs and we had our PAs and our DOs.
yeah. Like you started out like being a corpsman, learning how to be a corpsman at a fully funded command.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah,
you would show up after morning PT and you would do sit call. And sit call was just sit call screening. You brought your guy in, you asked him, you did your SOAP notes and your
yeah,
ABQs and your OPQRSTs, all the things that we did back then. And after that, you know, you do your SOAP note, you give it to your provider.
yeah.
And can you hear the dog barking?
A little bit,
All right, I'm
a
gonna
little
shut the
bit.
door. Yeah, at command, before deployment, you're doing your SOAP notes, and then you give your SOAP note, and your doctor or PA is like, oh, we're gonna do X, Y, and Z, or they're gonna follow up. And your follow-ups were great. You have them in the afternoon or the next day, and that's when you really got into the meat and potatoes of like learning your job, because
Yeah,
you're going to shadow the PA or the doctor when they're doing their exam, and you're just like sponging it all up. There was like a little while where I was I'm going to do the PA program. I'm going to take this all the way,
yeah,
and kind of got disenfranchised, with the longevity of the program after how much experience I had already had and the things that I had done in the past, and then they're telling me like I pretty much have to do a whole nother career that I've already done in school when I've already
right.
done all that experience. So at that point, I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna. It's not where it wasn't worth it to me to keep going that far.
Yeah, that's how I felt about nursing school. Yeah, I did not have a good time. had to go, doing one-on-one classes, and it's not like I make more money, but I can't. In some ways I could do more, but in other ways, not even close. I'd probably be very depressed if I was a trauma nurse. I'd be like, let me do that. Give me that crack. Uh, but hello, folks. Hope you're enjoying the conversation. Just a reminder to please like, share, and subscribe and comment. Helps the channel out against the algorithm and lets the algorithm know that the Nurse Dad podcast is worth promoting and helps us get this information out to the people who may need it. Thank you very much. The only time I ever saw a Marine cry at a true disappointment was when he realized he wasn't gonna uh, go to where the fight was. I remember when we were stationed at Camp Lemonnier for a month. We had to sleep with our rifles. We had all of our gear on us. We were woken up every night, go to the landing strip to put on. We put on our paint, face paint. We have our gear. We were ready to go. This is when South Sudan was having a civil war. It was either going straight to South Sudan or to somewhere in Ethiopia, then leaving from there, whatever it was. And we trained so hard for it, and it really seemed like we might go. There was a civil war in South Sudan. It was like we're just waiting to receive word. We're training every day for it, so many hours in the helos and all that stuff. And I remember, like, I think it was like toward the end, like this, we're all ready to go. It's 4 a.m. We got our face paint on. We got our gear on, and we were told we're not going to go. And I think this one Marine just lost it. He just couldn't take it anymore. And it's not like some macho thing, like, oh, I want to go over there and fight. It's like when you train to do something and you train to do something as rigorously as we did it, you want to use your skills. Now, my question is that a lot of people, they want to use their combat skills. They go over, they're ready to do some damage, and then they get into their first firefight. And a lot of people, I think, after that, or I don't know about a lot, but some people, it's kind of like, they see what it's like, and it changes who they are, and maybe they don't. Maybe they feel like they got their full of that, but like you seem like you want to keep going. You've gotten to your firefights, but the person you're describing is still motivated to go back and to keep going. What do you think that was in you? Because that's beyond wanting to emulate firefighters that you saw across the street who were good, loyal men, doing a job that was very tough. That goes way beyond something like that. And you didn't have a death wish. I'll let you answer that. What was it in you that made you so motivated?
I just, like you get experienced in something, and it's not one of the more favorable things that we do in society. So you kind of get in this mindset where you're like, let it be me. Let me save the kids from having to experience this. Let me take that burden off of them. And it's just
Do you feel protective over, like, do you get into a groove where you feel like, we refer to them as my Marines, my corpsmen, my Marines. It's a very personal. I don't want to call it like, I just don't want to say, like a father, because it's not like a father, but it's a teammate. But
to me, it was like, in the like you're like a shepherd, man. Like that's your flock,
yeah,
just
and not
they're
in a I'm better
so
than you way. We're talking about just a different capacity. Like
yeah,
you're the doc. You're the doc.
yeah. But like, when you have probably not a great example, but when you have livestock, it's your job to keep them immunized and safe. And if they get hoof injuries, you fix it. And it almost is the same, except when you're a corpsman, your livestock is Marines, and they are inherently violent and dangerous towards, any hostiles. But you're also doing the same thing. You're keeping up on their immunizations. You're making sure that they brush their teeth and floss and change their socks and hygiene regularly.
Take
You
their
know, it's just,
doxycycline if they need to take
yeah,
that,
right.
stick out your tongue, put it in your mouth.
For us, it was Mefloquine Mondays, but
That's it goes beyond the caring, the treatment. I tell a story. I told this before. I remember Marines know that there is a confidentiality agreement between a corpsman and a Marine. What they tell you is it's for you to know. And I'll give an example, give a serious one and a funny one. My first experience with this was I finally did field medical training because I was at the School of Infantry in the clinic for like 60 something days waiting to class up. And it was kind of great. I got this old school HM2 who was like you. He's like a Filipino guy. His brothers were in the army and then dad was a Marine. And I mean, this guy, long family history, just a great guy. And yeah, I learned a lot of clinical skills from him. Um, but I went to field medical training and then I got out 2 months later and I'm in the field for the first time. And this sergeant instructor, he comes up to me. This is ITB, Infantry Training Battalion. And this guy, he's like you. All these guys are like you now. It's like they're all combat vets and they got that, that attitude. I really, I miss those guys. But anyway, he comes up to me. He goes like, "Are you my corpsman? Are you my corpsman?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm your corpsman." He's like, "I got somebody for you, Doc. Sick dick." He screams, "Sick dick." And this little kid comes out of like the back. I see a little kid. I'm 28, 29 at the time. They're all 17, 18-year-old comes from the back. It's like, really quickly. And apparently, uh, he went downtown San Diego. You know what? I got to talk to you. I'm talking to talking to you. He went to downtown San Diego and he got something. And he told his sergeant first. Now, if he told his corpsman, nobody would be calling him sick dick. Nobody would know his secret. Well, they might find out later, but so there's a confidential nature. Like how do I say this? Like Marines could talk to you, and they do. Like it's beyond medical. A Marine can break down. He knows you're not going to tell on anybody. You're not going to make fun of him, call him names. He knows if he talks to Doc, he lets loose that is going to be um, between you guys. And my other story was on deployment. I had this butter bar Marine officer. Bad attitude type of guy. And so I'll leave it at that. And most, like I said, most of my experience is great. There were a few bad apples. This guy was one of them. And I don't know, there was, I guess my buddy, he's a Marine. And, I guess there was something that happened when they were out in town and he got hurt. But this officer came to me and wanted me to like say it was something else or to just burn this person. Like, what did he say? And this and that. I was like, go do something to yourself. I'm not going to say anything, and I don't have to.
Yeah, my Marine Corps leadership, same every unit has them. The guys that are just dumb as rocks, and somehow they made rank because they followed orders well and they could run fast. For the most part, I didn't really get any pushback from them when I made recommendations because I was also the same senior line corpsman where Friday morning I'd have a line at sick call and I'm like, hey, listen, anybody that's in sick call line, I'm going to put you all on 72 hours of SIQ and I'm going to have duty check your barracks rooms over the weekend. So which one do you want? And they're like, well, I guess I'm not that sick. I'll see you on Monday, Doc. Yeah. I'm like, you're not
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
one weekend because Doc said, oh, you got the sniffles. You could be sick in quarters. And then next thing you know, you're outside of the immediate duty area.
Yeah, those who knew me, I got a lot. This is on deployment. I was the new, I was an IA, and I got along with most people. But there's some guys out there. They just got something to prove in the wrong way. And they were not combat vets. I find on that deployment there were a lot of Marine officers, even enlisted, who just they were trying hard, man. They wanted to be combat vets, and they just had a certain attitude about that. And then when you actually work with combat vets, they're just chill, they're laid back. It's like they're not putting on, they don't need to put on some kind of show. Um,
I mean, in my experience, the guys that were actually in the fight, that chill comes from the fact that, we didn't go to the other side. And who's why didn't we? And for me, I'm like past my expiration date at this point. So like now everything's a bonus.
yeah,
So we're just gonna enjoy what we have and just be thankful and lucky that we still have it. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows, dude. It's not.
no.
Like there's a lot of days where I'll think back and I remember the guys that aren't with us anymore, and that's a tough cross to bear. Um, but I will say that being in the VA, we do have some good resources. Um, I found a couple great therapists over my time in the VA system, and I recommend that to everybody.
Yeah.
So, um, I don't want to be that angry, grizzled combat veteran. It's like, oh, you don't know what it's like. I'll go talk to somebody. I'll get all the shit off my chest, and
I think that's also a generational thing. I think our generation is more comfortable with getting things off your chest, where some generations it was, keep it inside, but then you also take out your frustrations on people, perhaps more.
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm also not trying to keep it all in and then drink myself into a dialysis clinic either.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, you look good, man. You look good. Your last two deployments were with the Marines?
Yeah, yeah. I was in Afghanistan with Second CEB, and then I did a Black Sea rotation with the 3rd Battalion, 8th Marines.
Now you listed a lot of we've been talking about the medical side a lot, but you're also pretty damn good with the rifle or a grenade launcher, right? There's an expression: you're a Marine until you're a corpsman. It's not like you're dishing out pills and treating wounds, and I mean most of the time you're not doing any of that stuff. You have your eye out and you're taking care of things as they come. But other than that, you need to operate as a functioning Marine.
I got
Describe that
more
process.
of a training element within the Marine Corps to train combat engineers in like advanced techniques. So we had a schoolhouse in Camp Lejeune, and while we were forward, we did, training for these guys that are forward. And what a great experience that was, man. That was like a solid core of dudes, all combat veterans, just teaching the newer generations advanced
Yeah.
techniques and really just building on the foundations from their like A schools and MOS schools. So that was great. Um,
Well, and another thing too is we're also teaching Marines how to take care of each other. There's self aid, buddy aid, and corpsman aid, and certain things we don't need to be bothered with as corpsmen. Also, I remember reading this is about like 2010, 2011, I believe. If a Marine was injured in the field and was sustained by the corpsman and eventually, transported back to the rear, there was a 90% survival probability for that Marine because they were stabilized by the corpsman. For a corpsman at that same time, it was a 55% survival probability. I remember reading about that. Um, I remember, and I've said this before, it's such an intimate way to learn medicine because you're not just learning how to do this to somebody who comes in and you never saw them before and they're gone. I mean, for us, it's like family. You're learning how to do this to your brothers and your sisters. And not only that, when you're teaching them how to care for themselves, it's like you're also teaching how to care for you. You don't want to be that guy in Saving Private Ryan and Tom Hanks is like, Doc, tell us what to do. You don't
yeah,
want to be that situation. So you're teaching Marines how to take care of themselves. You know that these skills you're teaching them are going to also be used for you. Um, it was such an intimate way to learn. And I mean, like, you're learning how to do a crike, and you're doing live tissue, you might be doing it on a human being in a week, 2 weeks. It's there's like it's not hypothetical, and it's not just a human being, somebody you're and really care about, like this, and maybe under fire on top of everything else. I think it's and you're really a great blend of that. You've got this excellent medical ability and skill set. You have the hindsight, but you're also able to keep up, if not surpass, a lot of the Marines you're with. What tied that all together for you?
It was just my exposure to, different people when I first got into the Navy. Like my Corpsman A school instructor, that guy was locked on, man. He was an FMF corpsman. He had multiple deployments.
I had an A school guy like that too, who eventually gave me pinned the FMF badge on me years later, which was crazy. But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. You see like this a badass like that, and you're like, that's the guy. That's who I want to be like.
I actually had two
Oh,
as my
okay.
instructors. And, and the one guy, our second class, so our first class was the main, and then the second class was like the A/. The second guy, we were like on test 10 or something like that, and he comes in, he was like, going back to the show, guys. And we're like, hell yeah, we're all clapping for him.
Yeah.
And like
Go back to the show.
we're clapping for this dude because he's getting redeployed back to a combat zone. And that was just the kind of mentality that we were instilled with from the beginning. Like combat is, varsity. If you want to
Yeah.
be
Yep.
JP,
Yeah.
head over to the branch health clinic, head over to the BAS, the RAS, and just do your time there. But, going to war, being in combat, your combat patrols, your combat action ribbon. Oh, dude, after that, man, let somebody without a combat action ribbon try to tell me. I'd say, hey, let me ask you something. How'd you get here without your car?
Yeah.
They're like,
That's a
my
good one.
car's in the parking lot. And I'm like, no, ding dong, your actual car. Oh, that's not like the maker of men. I'm like, isn't it though? It- but you got guys that are puffing their
But
chest
that's
out.
something, now you're not throwing that in the face of your average person. That a douchebag would do that. You are not like some guy like, show me your car. Okay. You're talking to a douchebag who's,
Oh,
trying to be this, he's basically a poser. You're using your powers to call him out. You're like the
yeah.
most humble person I know. So
I'm,
I want to point that out. Like
I'm telling, I'm
you're not
telling the
just like,
truth.
look at my purple heart. What do you got? You don't say anything. But if you come out and if you come across a douchebag, that's where the war chest comes out.
Yeah, if you got a guy that's peacocking, you're gonna use that to put their feathers away. If not, like, I don't know if you're familiar with Eric Deming.
Sounds familiar. Refresh my memory.
He's a Navy SEAL. He was one of my leaders over in Afghanistan. Um, dude, one of the best dudes I've ever met in my life. He taught me so much, and one of the biggest takeaways between Eric and my company commander when I was at 2CEB, Cyrus Patterman, aka Longboard 6, we those guys were just huge on selfless service and silent professionals.
Yeah.
And that was something that stuck with me. That was one of the most important things about my service.
Yeah.
You don't go around beating your chest. You go around lifting your juniors up.
I mean, if you were like that, I would not have. We wouldn't be talking now because I've done a good amount of stuff in my career, but I'm not combat deployed. I wanted to be. It didn't happen for me. Not only you're combat deployed multiple times over. You didn't treat me like that at all.
Yeah, if you got some guy that's never made it to the big show and he's talking that big game, like have a seat, son. Just have a seat. And if they need help sitting down, I'll help them.
Yeah.
But those
And if
guys,
you deploy, no matter how many times you deploy, there's somebody who's deployed longer, many more times. wherever. Like it's not worth trying to measure dicks over, you know?
No, no, because the end of the day, your job is making sure that the guys to your left and right laterals are as capable as possible. So if you have something in your toolbox and it could help them, it's your job to show them, to help them be better. And if they have something that could help you be better, it's your job to find out what that is. So for these guys that are just like puffing their chest out, oh, I'm God's gift to earth and you're a piece of trash and blah, that's you're not helping out. You need to
Yeah.
take a second, take a beat, and look at your junior and find out who they are and how to mold them. You know, you can't make a monkey swim a 5K and you can't make a goldfish climb a tree.
Yeah.
You got to find out what that monkey's good at and what that goldfish is good at and make them do that. Did the MOS selection at MEPS really give everybody the best suited job? No. But you can find something for everybody to do.
You also don't get like the best runners and the strongest people every time. You gotta make the best of what you got.
Yeah. I mean, for example, I'm not a great runner. I'm short and stocky. Can I pick up heavy things? Yep, all day. And when it comes time to run long distances, you're not going to get a good show out of me. I'm going to look
Yeah.
bad when I cross that finish line. I'm going to
That's
finish.
funny.
I'm not going to give it up. I'm going to finish,
Yeah.
and it's not going to be good.
I bet
But
you're great with the fireman's carry with those short legs, though.
I'll scoop you right off the ground. I don't got far to go to get down. I'm 5'8". I'm close, so I can get you up, get you moving. I'll probably pick your pack up with mine, and we'll just all get out of there.
I'm
One
on
big
my
group.
fours. You'll just be up there, you know?
Yeah, except for you. I'd put you on a fireman's carry, and your feet will still be dragging the ground.
Yeah, right. Yeah, man, you're a humble dude. That's one of the things I was how I could just talk to you. I didn't feel judged. I mean, it was I felt that right away that there wasn't even like a competition. Like you clearly had the leadership role. You were the senior enlisted guy. I mean, we were the same rank, but you had the experience. So it would be like kind of stupid to compete with that. But and I'm a humble person, so I realize I see you, and I'm like this guy could teach me a lot, especially at the time because I wanted to go back into the Navy in the Navy Nurse Corps. So I'm like this anything I can learn from you would be fantastic.
One of the
Or at
things
least,
that I learned about being a corpsman is that, like, even though I had a pretty deep well of knowledge, I knew for a fact that there's something you had in your toolbox that I wanted access to. And how am I going to gain access to that if I close you up? So
yeah.
for team/family building, we got to be together in the fight and have just open book with each other on how you do things and I do things, and you might do this. And I'm like, hey, that's great. I want to start doing that. And I might do something and you want to do the same thing. So that's like, for me, that was always the most important part about when you get to a team, feel your guys out, how can we all mesh and be the most efficient, effective fighting force that we can be.
I saw the antithesis. Yeah, I saw the antithesis. I can't pronounce the word. Okay, let me say this again. Um, I saw the opposite of that on deployment. This one deployment. Um, it was HM1, a first class petty officer. Multiple deployments. We had a guy with us. He was an Afghan vet. He was a corpsman. Went with a Marine infantry unit. It was even it was an eventful deployment as well. But when he got there, the HM1 was like, where you been? As in employed, and he said where he had gone to. He's like, oh, that's nothing. That ain't shit. And he left. And it's like you just kind of set the tone now for the entire deployment. Like this guy hates you, and you're the first class petty officer. There was no chief there at that command, so it was pretty much this guy. And you just set the tone. And this guy's not going to want to tell you anything, and he's also not going to want to listen to you. So it's like, how good now is this going to be for the Marines and for each other? You know, that's not a very good command.
No, that dick measuring, that's not it, man. That is because like the military is first and foremost a fighting force. You can't have, you know,
The name of the game is to be lethal.
you
That's
can't
what we're
have a
here for.
weak chain link and then abuse it.
Yeah.
You know, if you get an opportunity to change it out with a better chain link, obviously that's the best option. However, you don't always get to do that. You
Right.
gotta build it. If you can repair it and make it better, or condition it and make it better, that's what you gotta do. You can't just be like, oh, well, you were here and you didn't do shit, so you're not shit. Well, that's not necessarily the case. The man might not have had an opportunity to do what he could do at his full potential, and we got to figure out what that is. You know, you said that I'm Lynn, and that was something that I was that was like my thing because I'm not going to come in, I'm HM2 chaplain, you're HM2, and but you don't have your combat deployment and you don't have your warfare pin, so you're not shit. Like my thing is like, hey, you know, what do you need from me to help you advance, or what can I learn from you to help me? And everybody to my left and right was my brother. And as we progressed in our careers and times moved on, I had left and right lateral sisters, which
Yeah.
was interesting when that first started. But you would improvise, adapt, and overcome. You get used to it. And
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, those were everybody in wearing the uniform, brothers and sisters,
Yeah.
and it's our job to take care of and build them up and, make them the best that they can be. So having that attitude of like, I'm better than you is no,
Yeah. Yeah. It's a
absolute
waste of time.
trash.
What was the toughest thing for you to manage? Because you're doing a lot of stuff between providing care, being an ear, trying to guide the young men, just even in in terms of the military, how to make their lives easier or how best to function. When did it become overwhelming for you? Because you're unique in that you're like really pursuing deployments. You feel like you're sparing other people from having to do what you're doing. So it seems like you might not have the same mechanisms that fatigue you, where for some people it's like being in the field too long or being too claustrophobic or not getting to exercise what you've been trained to do. Like, what was it for you that just was you were starting to get to the last straw at times? What overwhelmed you?
Dude, I mean, I can sit here and pretend to be Superman, but the fact of the matter is I was not. And I didn't always pick the best coping mechanisms. You know, some days it was 2 a days in the gym, some days it was 3 days in the gym, and there was other days where not obviously not in theater, but in garrison, when we're back here at stateside, it was, oh, I did my workout this morning. I'm going to hit the 7-day store and get a bottle of Jameson. And, I, looking back in hindsight, I wish I would have used my like mental health resources a little bit more in the Oscar team.
Yeah.
But I didn't. And now I am, and I feel a lot better for it. But
Well,
back
you're
then,
older. Back then you think you can handle everything.
yeah, 20, 21, 25, you're all full of piss and vinegar and you're going to take on the world. And I tried. And thankfully, by the graces of whatever higher power that anyone believes in, I made it out unscathed. I didn't, take the easy way out, as some would say, or, when I was working with ODA and we were busy, and there was a lot going on, and the downtime was working out. And that was what seemed to be working best for those guys. And
I want to hike as I want to be 70 years old and hiking, you know?
dude, my buddy's dad, man, when we were younger, we went out to West Virginia, and we get out there. My man is 70 years old. We're climbing these hills, and it's just another day for him. And us kids, we were like in our late teens and dying. He's
Yeah.
like, "Come on, kids, let's go." And we're like, "Dude, slow
Yeah,
down."
that's the dream right there.
Yeah, that would be, yep. I mean, I try to get out in the yard every weekend, cutting down trees, clearing brush, you know, swapping out mulch and mulch beds, putting in
Yeah.
river rock here and there. I'm just working. And then, my 9 to 5, I work, I do physical labor. So it's just, you got to keep going. Like every day when I put my body armor on, I don't want to ever get to that point where I'm like, this is heavy. I want to be like,
Yeah.
this
I mean,
is a
it's going to
different.
happen a little bit. It's going to happen. You're not going to walk the way you used to walk or run, or it will feel heavier. Your shoulders will be sore faster. But overall, you want to be like, if I'm going to be 50, I'm going to be the best shape 50. If I'm going
Yeah,
to be 70, the best shape 70.
I want to be that guy that, you got the big shoulders and everybody's like, don't mess with that guy. If he grabs you, you're going to have a bad day.
Exactly. Old man strength, all
Yeah.
that. I want to be yeah, I want to be that guy.
Like over the past few years, I've noticed that, sitting around talking about like, oh yeah, this the time when we were out doing this and that, and we shot this guy or this blew this thing up, and like, you know, the guys that have been there and done that, nobody's like, yeah, cool, man, but it's like the leadership stuff because nobody gets more camaraderie out of talking shit on some dirtbag that was over top of you. Like that's
Yeah,
the highlight of
yeah,
camaraderie. It's like, hey, remember that staff sergeant douchebag? He thought he was like the greatest thing since sliced bread, but he would trip on his own feet all the time. Like
yeah.
that's the pinnacle of camaraderie when you can find that one guy to just reminisce about.
And that era too, I remember at Camp Pendleton, again, the instructors at the School of Infantry were all combat vets. People were turning down Purple Hearts. People were saying, like, I came back, my buddy didn't. I don't need a Purple Heart. Like there was, oh man, how do you describe it? I don't want to even say gung ho because it's a very solemn and
Well, we called it the enemy marksmanship ribbon. It was like a not a good thing to have.
yeah, I don't think people can't. I'm just trying to get context of that era. How could you accept a Purple Heart? Like that was the level, that was the standard at that time.
I know guys that I worked with that were like, if you quote unquote earn one, then it was bad SSPs. Like your standards and your practices were wrong, and that's how you ended up with a Purple Heart. And hindsight's 2020. However, it wasn't the case, Like you could be out on a mounted patrol and your your distances are good, your patrol formation is immaculate, and then just random guy out of nowhere takes a pop shot from you at you from the wood line and you get clipped.
Yeah,
There's always the variables that your SSPs cannot, your SOPs cannot account for.
right.
And to have something like that happen and your
But that's
buddies.
just another example of, say, what we were just talking about. Somebody like looking at your Purple Heart and sizing you up with the, at least especially with the attitude of that day, saying, "Oh, how did you, that's based on an error."
Yeah, the Purple Heart guys, they were a lot of us were, are you broken? Well, I'm not broken, you're broken. And
Yeah,
it was just not a good thing. And then you go to Wounded Warrior Battalion, and oh man, like you're going in there because you got your TBI and you got some like shrapnel injuries, and then you have to go do PT next to a guy with one leg and an arm, and you're like, I just got blown up, or was clipped or got some shrapnel, and you're like, how do I get to be in the same room with this guy?
right. Which compared to your normal person, shrapnel is a huge deal. Being clipped is a huge deal. But then in our world at that time, you kind of talk about it like a paper cut.
Yeah, I mean, I remember one day I had to do sutures on my chin in the mirror of our MRAP.
Wow.
And probably one of the only times when I was overseas where I was thankful I shaved frequently on that deployment, because I didn't have to like
Right.
shave my face and clean the area up and then put the sutures in. And like thankfully it was only two, but doing that in the middle of Afghanistan on the side box looking into a mirror on an MRAP, that's a pain. And you
Yeah.
didn't hear me complain about it because I wasn't gonna be like, hey, this needs stitches, I gotta go back to the field hospital, we're gonna end this mission, and readiness and capabilities out the window at this point. And I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna throw a couple of stitches in here, I'll grab some IV or some antibiotics out of my bag, and then we're gonna keep going.
Yeah. And that's also another thing to note is that I know people were telling me when they were, forward deployed, there would be a patrol, they had to have a corpsman with them. That patrol comes back, another one has to go out. We only have one corpsman. You got to go back out, Doc. So it's double duty. You're in many ways working even harder.
Especially with QRFs, if it was your squad or your platoon's day for QRF and you had a patrol that morning and you get called out for QRF in the afternoon,
Explain what
you're
QRF is for those who are watching
oh,
or listening.
that's your quick reaction force. So if you are in a theater of operation and you have what's called troops in contact, which is a firefight or some other case where the troops have to be engaged, they call for a quick reactionary force, QRF. So you either mount up in a mounted patrol, or you do a helicopter assault, which you hop into a helicopter, they fly you out close enough, and then you ground assault in from there. But yeah, doing those back to backs, not sleeping for a few days, sometimes you got tactical movements that take several days. We had a couple of operations where you didn't come back to the OP for 3 weeks. So,
Wow.
by the end of that, you've pretty much worn at least the same pair of socks for 4 or 5 days. Nobody has 3 weeks worth of socks in their go bag.
Yeah.
So, you're turning them inside out, you've designated a jerry can in the company for in your platoon, your squad, just for doing laundry. So you throw a little dish soap in there, shake the crap out of it, do what you got to do, and then hopefully your socks clean enough to put on for another day or two.
Yeah.
Baby wipes, baby wiping for a few weeks, not actually taking a real shower. And then and also too, like, where are you going back to? You're gonna go back to a shower tent where the water is just like lukewarm at best. So,
Yeah.
that's what it is. You're just rinsed off anyway.
You had the most impressive med bag I've ever seen in the Navy.
Well, that was my patrol bag.
Yeah.
But I had a truck bag too, and that had insane amount of stuff in it. And I would never carry that to walk, but we would keep that one in the truck. That was nice to have. But
Yeah.
on patrols, I would have a lot of Marines plus up their IFACs in their day bags. So, you have your 72-hour bag, and I'm like, hey, carry this, carry that. One of the weird realities that I always did was I handed everybody their own body bag.
Really?
Yeah. And they're like, what's this? I'm like,
Was it like the kind of put in their head, like get the
yeah, it was like, get complacent and end up in this.
right.
So, make sure your head's in the game and you're taking care of yourself and your guys on your right and your left.
Before, I want to ask you eventually how your service has impacted your life today. But I want to tell you something I had read, and so I feel like this summarizes kind of what we do, and I wanted to get your opinion on it. When I was in field medical training, I read a book by Colonel B.P. McCoy, and by that point, I was still trying to figure it all out. I had a pretty good idea, and I was motivated. By the time I got to FMTB, I really loved what I was experiencing at the School of Infantry and my experience with Marine culture. And I think the person in me who loved sports and just was just that alpha type of person and mentality to fix things. I really to fix a problem, to come up with a solution and make it better. I really took to Marine culture. So I'm reading Colonel B.P. McCoy's book, and he pretty much says that one of the things that makes an American warfighter so confident and able to move forward isn't just their creativity and their training. It's half of it is knowing that if you go down in a fight and there's any chance of survival, you can expect the greatest amount of care possible. If the corpsman can save you, the corpsman will. And he argues that that's 50% of the confidence, the ability to go out into the chaos and do your job. That knowing that if you go down, and there's a fighting chance of survival, you'll survive. What would you say about that? Like what? And this is kind of like what corpsmen give to the Marine Corps.
Yeah, absolutely. Corpsman, if you have the Marines, as far as the Marines are concerned, if you have a locked on corpsman, your your operational capabilities are pretty much limitless, because if they know that they got somebody that's going to take care of them if they go down, they're going to go a lot harder.
And
If
also
they're
someone who could function as well, if not better, than they can. Somebody who can carry his weight with a rifle and whatever needs to be utilized.
Yeah, I always told my guys, like my junior corpsmen, baby docs, if you will, I'd be like, hey man, you guys should try to be bigger, faster, stronger, smarter, at least 3 out of the 4.
Yeah.
Because these guys are looking at you and they're like, oh, you didn't go through School of Infantry, and you didn't go through X, and you didn't go through Y. You're just a Navy. It's your job to show them how capable you are as a corpsman. So, your PT and your physical knowledge is probably the factor that bolsters them
Yeah.
to be better warfighters, to know that this guy is physically capable and smart. And it shows that you went through and did all those things to be better for them, and they're going to fight harder for you.
It makes you better. Like I made it a point, maybe because maybe I'm an egomaniac. I don't know. I did not want Marines to see me resting when they were not resting. So if we're doing range movements, like I'm not in any kind of safety Vic, I'm wearing what they're wearing, I'm doing what they're doing. But I also never had anybody at that command fall out due to any kind of heat injury. Because by doing what they were doing, I was seeing how some guys were huffing and puffing or making mistakes or just how tough some stuff was. It shaped what I put in my med bag and what I carried on myself. So by learning how to compete, or I guess that's a civilian way to say it, learning what they do, not just made me better for them, it also increased my know-how, allowed me to treat them better.
Yeah, leading from the front.
Yeah.
Like when I was in my first time going to CAX or Mojave Viper or ITX, whatever they call it now, out in 29 Palms, our company gunner, he was a chief warrant officer. He was in Somalia, Fallujah, Ramadi. Like he did all the
It's a
things.
lot.
And this guy was salt of the earth, like hardcore man. And I get out there and he's like, "Oh yeah, you got combat experience?" I'm like, "Yes, sir, got combat experience. You know, done a couple things. Just a guy doing a job. And it comes to the end of the day, and it's winter time, or not winter time, but like it's nighttime in the desert, so it gets starting to get a little cold. I just leave my plate carrier on, you know I've
Yeah.
been weeks wearing that thing, a few days out here in 29 Palms on this little field op training scenario. I'll just keep it on. So we're all getting ready to get to our bivouacs, and I get set up, and I'm going to be in a, leaning up against the truck tire, sleeping upright.
Yeah.
He sees this and he goes, "You're not laying down?" I was like, "You can't get up as fast if you get all snuggled up in your sleeping bag." And he was like, "Good call, Doc." Keeps his plate carrier on, sits right next to me, and I'm like, "Oh, now we're gonna have a hard man competition to see who can last the longest."
You
So,
can't sleep better sitting up in the plate carrier. It does something.
oh
It's
yeah, 100%. You know, it's like
like a
a
brace.
simplified neck pillow.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Um,
we stayed in our plate carriers and we just, embraced the suck and like you pretty much showed the junior guys like, hey, we've been here before, we've been on this field before, and this is what it's like in real time. And then you would see more guys wearing it more often, because when you're first getting into those situations where you're training and you're not used to real life application, you make comfort based decisions, you take off your plate carrier, you put it down, you're just like trying to maximize your time not wearing your PPE, when the guys that have been there know that we're going to have it on a lot going forward, so you might
yeah.
as well get used to it.
You said something that reminded me. A lot of people they don't think about the shock of wearing that kind of thing. You're outside, you're doing range movements, you're doing tactical training, you're in combat boots, you're in head to toe uniform, you're wearing Kevlar. It's a shocking experience for someone to get used to who might otherwise not be used to something like that. It's not easy, let alone wearing a ruck and carrying a med bag or a trauma kit and all that. It's a lot of weight and handling a rifle and
Yeah, handling a loaded rifle, like there's weight. Everything, ounces make pounds, and you'll hear that a lot.
yeah, no, Marines, ounces equal pounds, pounds equals pain.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I go by that today, and I still to this day will go by ORM, operational risk management. That's how, assessing the risks and the possible hazards associated with those risks. I go by that. It's like my mental Bible, approaching the unknown. Were you afraid at times? You're not a superhuman. You're motivated to go into something, but you were also fearful of an outcome, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. If there's ever a time where some guy claims to have been in combat and there was no ounce of fear in him, I'm gonna call BS. Like, that's not a
You're
thing.
going despite your fear. You're going, you're not letting it hold you back. You're going into something you feel like you're obligated. It's your duty to go there and to do that job, but you are afraid. You're human.
Honestly, for me, the fear was like, that was one of the things that made it appealing. Like, you're out there and you don't know if today's your last day, and it just gives you
Yeah.
there. You don't get any feeling like that outside of combat. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I think the closest thing you come to that is like being a firefighter, doing an interior attack. You're
Yeah.
all loaded up with your turnout gear, and it's almost like having a combat gear on. You're going in, there's fire everywhere, so death's around every corner. And there's guys that do jobs like that, and every single one of them that really really does it, and that is really about that life. They'll all tell you the same thing. Like, the fear when you're in the moment is it's a high. You
It
kind of
is.
look
I know
for
what you're
that.
saying. I know what you're talking about. Also worth mentioning too, I don't want the combat element to hog up all the attention, but Marines also train how they fight and they train hard. I would say probably you're training harder for a deployment than on deployment at times, right? Aside from firefights that doesn't really encompass a lot of the time in terms
No,
of
it's
like
a
training.
small amount of
It's
time
more so when
training.
you're not in combat. I wanted to point out because I lost a buddy who died training in Djibouti, Africa. They were doing a live fire exercise, and he got hit by somebody in weapons company. I'm just trying to point out that it's not just a combat role when you are functioning in a very rigorous environment, and Marines are different from everybody else because they know that they will always be the first in, and they can be sent directly by the President of the United States. They don't have to wait for congressional approval. And this just, I believe, more than anybody, if you're attached to the Marine Corps, you are training for war, and you know that it could happen at any moment. And you're training that way, you're living that way before deployment, and you're going right back to it after deployment. I just wanted to bring attention to that. What in your life today, you work in law enforcement, how much of what you went through shapes the type of person you are today and carrying out your duties and just how you are as a person?
My military experience is an invaluable tool that I get to use almost daily. As far as like, my leadership experience and my experience with good leadership, I get to take that and use it, and I'm in a supervisory role in my job. And, if I see somebody underperforming, it's just like I said before, we're going to find out who this person is and what they are about and how we can bolster their performance and make them better and more efficient in our duties. So that's my military experience. And then, like, we're in law enforcement, so we do have emergency situations. And when those emergency situations come, you see, regular people with limited experience, and they're just like wide-eyed. They are looking for that guidance, and
Yeah.
I'm fortunate enough to have the experience to where I can say, this isn't my emergency, it's an emergency that's happening, and we're going to get everything under control. So, I get the privilege of, people look to me and they're like, what are we going to do? And I'm like, all right, well, since I've seen this before, it's like the commercials where
You
they're
have
like,
to be quick on your feet. If that's the lot God gave you, it seems like you're the, what are we doing? Well,
yeah, yeah. I'm like, well, here's what we're not going to do. We're not going to panic. Okay, everybody, you know, get it together. And it's not, sometimes it's identifying somebody that needs a job to do. So you're like, hey, can you secure this? Can you, uh, make sure this is taken care of? Assigning duties is important in that kind of situation. So
yes.
it,
Just to relate it to civilian world that a lot of people can relate to, when you learn basic life support, and you haven't, you would you tell somebody if someone goes down, get the AED, call 911. You're assigning roles in order to get something done.
yeah, I even took over the role of lead CPR instructor at my facility.
Will
And
you stop volunteering for things? Or
it's just, sharing knowledge. My partner, he's a combat veteran also.
hey, Lynn,
And
just turn on your light for a second. I'm sorry.
oh,
No problem. Just start with your buddy.
my partner with the CPR lead, he's, we're a, like co-leads. It's not like a one person does everything. It's just there's two of us and we just bounce it off each other. So if I'm busy one day, he takes care of it. If he's busy, I take care of it.
Yeah.
And but he's also a combat veteran. So when it comes time to teach our classes, we're like, hey, when this is happening, like there's a cardiac arrest and you're not in cardiac arrest. It's just your job to facilitate this person getting better and, cool, calm, collective, your communication over the radio, talking to dispatch, everything's got to be clear and concise to get,
Yeah.
the effect that we're looking for, and teamwork. And, you got your person to your left and your right, and how can I utilize them and make this whole thing go smoother? So we're fortunate enough to have the experience to relay it forward and make our team stronger.
I'm sure this goes into your relationship.
100%. My girlfriend constantly, she's like, "Can you please let me do something?" And I'm like, "No, relax. Like, I want you to like just be happy and comfortable."
Yeah.
And she's like, "No, you just don't want me in your way." And I'm like, "What's the difference? Let me handle my kitchen, let me make this meal for you." Um, but I love doing things with her, and we have a great relationship, and we work well together. But there's times where I'm just like, I want you to go sit on the couch and I want you to watch that trash reality TV show that I hate, and I'll go do things. So
Yeah.
like, it does. It works out for me because, I'm okay with doing things and providing, and, you know, so I don't mind. But then there's times where she's like, please let me help you. Please let me do something. And I'm like, yeah, you're doing something. You're here with me. You're here for me. And I appreciate you. Let me show you I appreciate you.
Once you counter the type of man you want to be, and you've met people like that, they stay with you. You judge yourself through their eyes. You just know when you're falling short. I'll ask you one more thing. I feel like I feel like now things are going in a better direction for the military. I think for a moment there were, and I'm not getting political about it, but just I feel like there were a lot more people, or how do I say this? I came across too many people that seemed like they loved to wear the uniform, and in my view, they weren't measuring up to what ultimately is the point, which is to um, be a lethal fighting force if it needs to be, and to the best person who is capable of doing the job should be doing the job. How do you feel about the attitude now? I feel like there's a healthy attitude again, even talking about the military.
I noticed it towards the end of my time in service where, the combat was drawn down. The combat deployment slowed up. There was no actual combat happening. The administration had put the gloves on. They were talking about Operation Inherent Resolve. They were going to give out medals and awards for people not fighting back, like showing
Oh,
restraint. And they just got away from that warrior ethos of like,
yes.
play this game, you're going to get punched in the mouth.
The
And
warrior ethos isn't just, I mean, the way you said it, I love it. That's what I love about you. Uh, but the warrior ethos is the best chance of keeping the most amount of Americans alive. This is
yeah,
this is like not just this isn't Rambo. It's taking care of each other. And also, which you've encompassed during this talk, is not prejudging people, basically creating a family, a team.
yeah, there was a sentiment of, you'd see the guys with the combat action ribbons and the Afghan Iraq service medals, and you would see them treated by the newer administrations like, hey, we don't
Don't
need
get a
you
big
anymore.
head or.
Like the dog, we were all looked at as like the dogs of war, and that we only had one job, and it was break glass in case of emergency, and that
Yeah.
there wasn't really room for us anymore in the new military.
You could
So
say
I
that today
a
veterans
lot of
overall are kind of treated in that way in the profession by quote unquote professionals.
yeah, I mean that's like a thing in law enforcement too, is like you'll see the special operations units, and the brass looks at them as like, knuckle draggers, and they're like, oh, you guys are special operations, you just want to like kick in doors and do the worst, when that's not true at all. But there's
Yeah.
a place and a time for all facets of operations. So yeah, diplomacy is important, because if we can talk it out, then great. But how long do you want to drag out the negotiations to where, the juice isn't worth the squeeze anymore? Sometimes you got to put action into place. And to look at the guys that do the action as less than, it's a problem, and that's what it was getting to.
And it's not just limited to Western civilization, but for the most part, like every idea you have about civil rights and, you know, sexual revolution or human rights, like most of the world doesn't follow that. They don't care about your opinion, or you get punished for your opinion, or there's no equal rights. We're kind of a minority of people who have who enjoy what we're enjoying, and the rest of the world, they're not. It's not a conversation that's keeping people off our backs or keeping the enemy away from us. It's our lethality of force. It's how powerful we are, what we're willing to do to people who threaten us. I think people forget about that. I think they think it's like the power of conversation or diplomacy, and that has its place. But I guarantee you that if most countries believed that the American military was weak, um, we'd have a lot of trouble in the world right now.
We're privileged, and to be in like an environment where knowledge is power. We have knowledge, but also what sometimes I think people forget is that strength is still strength. So yeah, we should be knowledgeable and strong. So the military, and we're starting to see this, but they're getting back to being a lethal fighting force, and that's important.
Which
And
doesn't jive well with certain sentiments, especially people. I call them like theoretical people. It's like your ideas are. I can see where you think they work, but that's not how the world works. It's just not how people operate. Like they're not going to respect you unless you're strong, physically, mentally. It's not just being sophisticated and being able to have a conversation. Sometimes the only thing that's keeping people at bay is that you're threatening them or you're threatening, where they know if they come and push you, you're going to push them back twice as hard.
if you say something and you can't back it up, why'd you even say it?
Yeah. All right. I'll tie it up, man. Is there anything I didn't talk about that you wanted me to bring up?
I don't think so. I think we did covered a lot.
Yeah, we did. Okay. All right. Let me
Is there anything you wanted to touch on that we didn't get to?
No, it's hard. I wrote down stuff and other things were answered by just virtue of having a conversation, and I'm still trying to learn my way around doing this. I need to learn how to be probably more direct or say things with less words. Like I had a question like, what advice would you give somebody who wants to do this? But just by virtue of our talk, I think someone has a pretty good idea of what they could consider. But I want to
Oh,
thank you,
definitely.
Lynn.
Like if they
What
if
would you
they
say?
watched all this and they didn't get the point of like be open minded and be mindful of your left and right, your brothers and your sisters, then they should
Go to
should
the
go to
gym.
a different channel. Go
Yeah,
to the gym.
go to the gym. Thank you for doing this. Um, love to talk to you again sometime. Thank you though for taking out the time of your day to talk to me. We're friends in real life. I don't get to see you as much. I don't get to see you enough, is what I meant to say. Yeah, thank you for doing this, man. Thank you for your service. Thank you for spending the time with me.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Glenn. Thank you for your service. It was great working with you. It's great being your friend. We definitely don't see each other enough, but this is cool. Getting just to chat with you on a Sunday evening.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, man. I'll catch you later.
All right, brother. Take care.